Hey everybody, welcome. Give us just a minute. We are getting a couple technical things in the background set up, and then we will get started as people are filtering in. Thanks for being here with us tonight. Welcome everybody. We will be starting up in just a minute. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Welcome everyone to the Arlington Committee of 100. Our program for this evening is What's Next for Clarendon. My name is Hannah Dannenfelser. I'm the chair of the Arlington Committee of 100, and I'm going to be your moderator for this evening. If you're watching us on Facebook Live and you think this is something your friends would like to hear, please consider sharing the Facebook Live to your page. To stay in touch with us, we really encourage you to like and follow our Facebook page. We do publish our events through email announcements. If you are registered on Zoom, you will be receiving those. We also publish through Facebook events, and we would really love to have you continue to join us in future months. Please go ahead and mark your calendars for our next program on Wednesday, May 11th at 7 p.m. This is not the actual title. I will give you that heads up. This is our placeholder title here, but we hope you're going to join us for a discussion on what is being done to address the severe shortage of adequate mental health services, care professionals, and hospital beds in our community and in Virginia as a whole and into the future. So we'd really love to have you join us next month for a really important program. Also want to give you a heads up that we are tentatively going to have our June program as an in-person program. I know for our long-term members, you will be very excited to hear that. We have missed you a lot in this virtual environment. So please stay tuned. We will be publishing information on that right now, shortly. We're still in kind of some of the preliminary stages. So you will hear from us soon. If you are a lover of local community issues in Arlington, if you're an eager learner and passionate civic citizen, you've come to the right place here today. Our organization has a small but not insignificant operating cost that allows us to operate and continue our work. So if you would be willing to make a donation to sustain programs like these, we'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a member. You can donate through the link in the chat. You can also, if you are someone who is writing checks, you can mail it to our P.O. Box. I'm going to keep that up on the screen as you are considering donating. So thank you for considering us. A very big thank you tonight goes out to Jerry Laporte and Scott Pedowitz, who teamed up to coordinate the program. You'll notice we have a bigger than usual panel tonight in order to incorporate a range of perspectives and details. So a special thank you to the program committee team for a lot of great work in envisioning this and really hustling to put it into place. I am especially excited to hear tonight about what the future looks like for the Clarendon neighborhood. A shout out to my fellow young professional Arlingtonians that know that the Clarendon brunch following is not just a fun activity, but really a weekend way of life. I'm a former Clarendon bar employee myself. I'm also proud to say that I've been an investor in the economic development of the Clarendon neighborhood and the Arlington tax base through numerous bar and brunch tabs. But Clarendon isn't just a spot for young professionals. We have great restaurants and retail throughout Clarendon, and it's a great neighborhood for families to have a fun night out and really anyone to get some great shopping done. If you are looking for a great spot, I encourage you to just walk up and down the street and walk into really any of those restaurants or shops, and you will have a great night. Really encourage you to be supporting our local businesses, especially our restaurants who have been especially needing our support over these last 2 years. All right, moving on to our program here. We are going to have a Q&A with the audience as we do each month following the program, and please use that Zoom Q&A box. I do want to remind our audience that if your question is concise and to the point, I will be more likely to ask it. We do have a high volume of questions. We unfortunately are usually not able to get to all of them, but I'm going to do my best to get to as many as possible with some support behind the scenes from Scott and Timone, who are really fantastic supporters in making sure I get to as many of them as I can. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to our panelists who are here with us tonight. We have Jennifer Smith, who's the planning manager for Arlington County Planning Division, and Brett Wallace, who is the principal planner and urban designer for Arlington County Planning Division. They're co-presenting. We have Scott Sklar, who is the president of the Ashton Heights Civic Association and also a sustainable energy professional. He'll be presenting solo. And then we have co-presenters David Orr, who is the chairman of Orr Partners, and Ryan Orr, who is the vice president of development for Orr Partners. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jennifer real quick. She's going to then pass it to Brett as a co-presenter. But real quick, let me just tell you a little bit about Jennifer and Brett. Jennifer is the planning manager of the comprehensive planning section within Arlington County's planning division. She manages a team of 11 planners who lead major long-range planning studies, conduct discrete and countywide land use planning and zoning studies, implement the Columbia Pike Initiative Work Program, and oversees the county's comprehensive plan, specifically the general land use plan. She works with Brett, who is a principal planner and urban designer in the urban design section within the Arlington County Planning Division. He's been with Arlington County government since 2012, and he's responsible for the design review and project management of both county and private development projects, including area master plans, complete streets, public spaces, and the development of policy recommendations. He's currently leading the Clarendon Sector Plan Update, a focused study evaluating land use, building form, transportation, public spaces, and public facilities. They are going to speak to us for about 15 minutes altogether, and then we will keep moving on. So Jennifer, Brett, we're excited to have you. Kicking it off to you.
Thanks so much, Hannah, and thank you to you and Scott and Jerry for setting this up and welcoming us into the meeting tonight. Again, thanks for the introductions. So as you and others on the call may be aware that we've been conducting a land use study for the specific area of around the Clarendon Metro Station, and it's been underway since the fall of 2020. Today, the 2006 Clarendon Sector Plan conveys adopted planning guidance for this metro station area, like other sector plans that we have around metro stations around the county. This study was conducted as a targeted effort limited to a specific section of the station area for several reasons. There were multiple property owners that were starting to show a strong interest in redeveloping properties around the western section of the station area. The process would provide an opportunity to showcase preliminary proposals that were being contemplated and share those in a broad way with all of the civic associations and other stakeholders who may be reviewing those individually over time. Further, some of the developers were seeking alternatives that diverge from sector plan guidance and zoning regulations that apply in this area. And therefore, the Long Range Planning Committee of the Planning Commission, using that committee as a vehicle and undertaking our process, that would provide a forum for review and consideration of those potential changes or divergences from the sector plan. Additionally, several factors that were used to form recommendations for public facilities in 2006 have changed, and it was important that we consult with the community on new ideas to meet public facility and public space needs going forward into the future. I know Brett's going to go into the highlights of those topics that we've discussed and the adjustments that we are proposing for inclusion in an updated plan. Additionally, this process was conducted, again, relying on LRPC, but we also had expanded representation from several interest groups, including civic associations, advisory commissions, and representatives from the development community for those properties within the subject area. And through this process, we've heard information regarding development proposals. We've shared analysis related to use mix, development form changes. We've collected and responded to feedback and used feedback to shape recommendations for updates to the plan. So finally, from a timeline perspective, the proposed sector plan updates and associated changes to the general land use plan and zoning, also zoning amendments, will be considered for final action by the county board next Saturday, April 23rd. So thank you again for having us. And now I'd like to turn it over to Brett Wallace, our project manager for this study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I will pull up my screen and just want to confirm that it's visible to the group.
Looks great.
Okay, good. Always good to confirm. Okay, so I'm going to go into the full screen mode here. And again, thank you, Jennifer, for the introduction. I think that covered a lot of the background and overview of the process in the study. Again, my name is Brett Wallace. I'm with the Planning Division, and I've been serving as the project manager for the sector plan update. As Jennifer mentioned, the purpose of the study was really to evaluate and develop recommendations for focused updates on the western end of Clarendon to the 2006 plan policy and guidance, including the zoning ordinance regulations. I do want to note, and we've noted several times throughout the process, that the plan's vision statement, overarching goals or framework elements were outside of the study's scope. So those remain paramount to maintaining a walkable urban scale in Clarendon. And the study considered whether the plan's specific recommendations for individual sites, again, within the western end of Clarendon, should be refined to be consistent with broader planning goals and policies. So you can see here on the upper right is the study area of Western Clarendon, which is largely bounded by Washington Boulevard, Kirkwood Road, 10th Street, and North Hudson Street. So there are a number of private sites within the study area that are identified here in this slide, including the county-owned site on 10th Street between Irving and Hudson Street with the current Fire Station 4. So elements of the plan that have been evaluated throughout the process, as Jennifer mentioned, include not only land uses for private redevelopment, but also public, including recommendations for building height and form, transportation, including new street locations and design, a potential replacement for Fire Station number 4, and guidance for public spaces within the study area. And so going forward, post-county board adoption, staff will be producing a comprehensive update of the sector plan, including updates to text, exhibits, maps, and images that are affected by the updates, specifically within this focused area of the plan. Again, I mentioned the final formatting of that plan would be done post-county board adoption and may include other updates to images and other graphic design updates as needed, just to bring things up to current date, as this has been a little over 15 years. And so there are some outdated images within the plan that may need to be updated. Just real quickly, looking at the commission review, as Jennifer mentioned, we started back in the fall of 2020. We conducted 6 LRPC meetings, including 1 zoning committee meeting. We had multiple online opportunities for engagement. We met with the Planning Commission in March for the request to advertise. The Housing Commission also in March. March 19th, we met with the County Board for the request to advertise. Then we met with the Transportation Commission. And most recently, we met with the Planning Commission for adoption of the plan. And looking ahead over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be presenting to the Park and Recreation Commission on April 19th and the County Board for adoption of the plan on April 23rd. And through these engagements, All the commissions that you see here have recommended adoption of the plan with several amended motions, which staff has been considering and could go into detail if needed. Before we go into the recommendations of the 2022 sector plan, I just want to quickly remind folks of some of the recommendations from the 2006 sector plan, which are shown here on this slide. So first starting with 10th Street and the new envisioned public park on 10th Street, which would assume the relocation of the fire station, the redevelopment of the Verizon's site, which as we know today is not going to redevelop anytime soon, to create a large rectilinear park. A new 10th Road providing east-west connectivity between North Irving Street and Wilson Boulevard. Clarendon Circle intersection improvements, which of course have been implemented since 2006. And then again, looking at Fairfax Drive, which was identified as a multi-purpose space that could occasionally be shut down for public markets and events, whereas in staff's current proposal, this is more of a permanent public space that could serve the public needs in terms of biophilic elements and other smaller recreational activities. So just quickly want to provide an overview of the staff recommendations for the 2022 sector plan update, and really organizing into these three buckets: the public realm, the building form, and the use mix. So starting with the public realm, as I mentioned earlier, there are some new street alignments and locations related to the block structure, and which is related to parcel assemblage with some of the private development sites. And I'm more specifically speaking to the 10th Road segment between North Irving Street and Wilson Boulevard. I mentioned a new permanent public space on Fairfax Drive, which is a big departure from the 2006 plan. As I mentioned, is more of a flexible space. As you can see in the illustrative plan comparisons here, as more of a permanent public green space that could be used throughout the year. And then also additional sites that we've identified or recommending for potential retention or expansion, including the current DPR owned Triangle Park space and some of the adjacent parcels there on the corner of Fairfax and 10th and Irving. In terms of building form, staff is recommending some slight modifications to building heights and step backs and taper requirements, including some modifications and recommendations for an alternative facade preservation for a specific site within the study area. In terms of the use mix, staff is looking at proposing changes to the land use to allow hotel use to be on sites that are currently designated as prime office sites, looking at retail frontages to be removed from the current use mix map, and proposing a new map proposed in the sector plan, which I'll show in a minute, and multiple land use options and alternatives for the county-owned 10th Street site, including Fire Station 4. And again, identifying critical infrastructure such as the Verizon telecommunications facility and Dominion Energy substation identified to remain within the study area. So to maintain flexibility on the county-owned site on 10th Street, and this again is on 10th Street between Hudson and Irving Street, staff is recommending flexibility to include multiple land use options for the county property, including both on-site replacement of the fire station and off-site replacement. So you can see the four options that are laid out here, with the first on the far left, figure 2.6 would be a fire station co-located with potential affordable housing yielding approximately 260 committed affordable units. Of course, the staff has identified many challenges with this proposal, and it would be very difficult to provide any meaningful or sizable public open space with a scenario such as this. Figure 2.7, the second scenario would be a standalone fire station, would assume an underground parking in a 10,000 square foot park and potential for rooftop public access above the fire station. Figure 2.8 would assume the fire station be relocated within close proximity of the current site and could yield an affordable housing project of approximately 218 committed affordable units with approximately 17,000 square foot public space. And then the final figure, 2.19, would also assume the relocation of the fire station with conversion of the county-owned L-shaped park space to approximately 40,000 square feet of open space. And when we talk about affordable housing throughout the process and with the commissions, we did note that Clarendon has the fewest amount of committed affordable units within the Roslyn-Boston corridor, representing just 3% of the total committed affordable units. And so a development scenario for the county site with affordable housing, such as shown on the previous slide in figures 2.16 and 2.18, could potentially yield approximately 215 to 260 committed affordable units. And looking at not only housing and density and open space, staff has put together this summary here looking within the study area only. So looking at comparing residential housing units with planned permanent public open space. And so some of the key takeaways here were that some of the options that were shown for the county site with housing could yield approximately 3% more housing than was envisioned in the 2006 sector plan. And options without housing would be a slight decrease in housing from the 2006 sector plan. And in terms of public open space, it's within all four of the scenarios I previously shown, there would be a comparable amount or more planned permanent public spaces than envisioned in the 2006 sector plan. Going back to use mix, I mentioned some of the changes to the use mix map that you can see on the upper right of the screen, showing some of the sites to be identified or to allow hotel use on sites identified prime office. Staff is also recommending removing the retail frontages from the use mix map and instead proposes a new map be proposed in the sector plan, which is shown in the bottom right, which is consistent with the 2015 Arlington retail plan. And I mentioned the critical infrastructure to remain, such as Verizon and Dominion Energy substations. So those are identified as utilities on the proposed use mix map in the upper right. And of course, I mentioned the multiple land use scenarios for the county site on 10th Street and Fire Station 4. Just quickly looking at building height and form, looking at the comparison of the 2006 with the 2022 proposed heights map, staff is recommending continuing the heights that were proposed in 2006 for only one block to the west of North Irving Street. So in 2006, the sector plan permitted heights up to 75 feet, tapering up to 110 feet. So staff is recommending extending that allowance just for one block to the east. And also, through analysis, staff has considered the overall proportion of the street right-of-way on 10th Street and distance from the single-family residential neighborhoods to the south. And at the county board meeting for the RTA, it was recommended to expand the scope of the advertisement to include an alternative map for co-location, which is shown here and highlighted on the right here. So this alternative map would permit heights extending over to North Irving Street, and again, assuming co-location with a fire station with a potentially affordable housing above. And again, as I mentioned earlier, and looking at the heights, staff always is looking at the existing context. So we're looking
go ahead
at.
And give you a time check.
Okay, yeah, this is it. I
Perfect,
think I have one more slide. So we're looking at existing heights to the east of the block, which consist of heights upwards of 180 or 80 to 110, excuse me. And so staff is proposing removing the taper plane requirement and instead introducing gradual steps in building heights to achieve an appropriate taper down from the core of central Clarendon to the lower density residential neighborhood. Quickly, some of the GLUP and zoning ordinance amendments are mainly adjustments to the GLUP map to account for some of the block structure, street locations, and some of the new open space proposals. And for the zoning ordinance amendments, again, I mentioned modifying the use mix regulations for hotel use and some of the map changes to reflect the recommendations for block structure, including the alternative map for the county site that you see on the bottom right. So in terms of next steps, we always welcome your feedback and questions by viewing the project page or contacting myself. And again, I mentioned the upcoming meetings we have on schedule are for the Park and Recreation Commission and the County Board for adoption on April 23rd. So that concludes my presentation. Apologies for going over slightly.
No worries. Thanks so much to both Brett and Jennifer. We really appreciate having y'all tonight. So those were great presentations. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to our next panelist, Scott Sklar. Scott is the president of the Ashton Heights Civic Association. He also is a sustainable energy professional and adjunct professor. He has a really cool and extensive career around sustainable energy, especially solar. If you visit his home here in Arlington, you'll see that it's powered by solar with solar water heating, geothermal heating and cooling, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce that. I was about to say it, but something about batteries. So that's not what he's here to speak about today, but I just thought that was pretty fun. So I thought I'd share that. His Ashton Heights Civic Association celebrated their centennial last year, and around the neighborhood, Scott's really known for his whiskey happy hours. So I am very excited that through Committee of 100, I've been able to score an invitation to his yard. So Scott, I'll be seeing you after this soon, but I will go ahead and let you speak about the Ashton Heights Civic Association and the Clarendon Sector Plan.
Thanks so much. I'm going to try to share my screen here so I can do this. Here we go. Now, how come I have to go? Okay, oh, share, there we go. Boom. Okay, view screen. So you see this now? Is this
Yes,
up?
we can see it.
Okay, so I come with a couple of hats here. The bottom right and the picture in the center is both my home and my office building behind my home, both totally self-powered. I do weekly tours. I've lived here for 37 years, and I'm one block from the intersection of 10th Street North and Wilson Boulevard, or the edge of Clarendon. And on the top left, I've been president for 11 years of the Ashton Heights Civic Association. And we've been a very active civic association, interface with the county. And I want to thank the Arlington staff who just presented and the Long Range Planning Commission for working with us so well. I have a 22-year-old global clean energy business based here. But maybe more importantly, I'm an adjunct professor at GW and energy director of their Environment and Energy Management Institute. I teach 3 different interdisciplinary courses for the last 12 years, and 2 of them are under the Professional School of Urban Studies. And the building I teach at is in Arlington. GW's building on the corner of Glebe and Fairfax Drive. So I do a lot in urban planning and urban land use, primarily as it relates to buildings and energy. So I was asked to be at 60,000 feet. And so I am. And one of the issues on this slide is what we don't want. And I went around a couple of days ago at noontime to take pictures of streets in our area here, 2 in the Clarendon area, 2 in the Roslyn area, 1 in the Ballston area, of streets where they have high buildings and it's shady all the time. By the way, it's noonday sun, and you can see on the sidewalks in the streets, they're all shaded every single time. These are wind tunnels, and it's not what we want. It's not the community that we expect to be in. And so what we do want, as I'll get into, that was touched briefly by Brett, is that the fire station lot, we keep the fire station. We do a 50,000 square foot central park, including the roof of the fire station, maybe for community gardens, but have a central place that residents can be in all over the county as they come and visit this densified urban area that we're going to have. So I want to talk a little bit about the Arlington Way. And by the way, several members of Ashton Heights from the 60s and 70s really worked on the Arlington Way. And I want to put some insights a little bit to you and just address the issues. One is that we all have been involved in long-term planning and GLUPs and sector plans. And we want to make sure that while things take time, and by the way, some issues take time, which is very correct, as the staff tells us, sometimes we feel surprised that all the years we do these long-term processes, all of a sudden it's all discarded and they come up with new things. So we sort of are thinking of how much effort you put in if you really can game the process at the end. And Arlington needs to think about that. We as a community do. The other issue is we're getting a lot of community surveys, which I think is a great thing, but they're not necessarily professionally assembled or worded, and they don't always include the new views and expressions. And so we're urging the county to get more professional survey writers. In addition, the surveys basically now are countywide, and while we do believe there should be polling countywide on anything, we also believe that the affected neighborhoods should have their separate survey so that the county and Arlington staff and the commissions can see what the people who live around the plans feel, and they can have better interaction. And the last thing I wanted to raise on the table from 60,000 feet is do not ghettoize affordable housing. As I will talk about in another slide, we have 9 buildings either being built now or about to go up in Clarendon, and every single one of them should have a floor or more on affordable housing, not 2 or 3 apartments. And so you're not doing where you're just shoving affordable housing in one place to get your statistics right, when it really needs to be integrated in everything we do. And I do want to point out that the developers who are redeveloping the Wells Fargo lot made a presentation to our civic association in our last annual meeting, and we asked them, would they be willing to do affordable housing? And they said, absolutely. And we asked them, how do they feel about a park right near their investment? They go, it enhances the investment. So I want to raise that we support rapidly affordable housing, but we believe it needs to be integrated, not ghettoized. So these are the buildings that we have checked that are either being built or planned, and there are 9 of them. Now, one is 1 block away on the corner of Washington Boulevard and Kirkwood. I understand that, but they're really in the Clarendon area. And so I want you to think about the mass amount of cement and buildings coming in over the next few years. It is beyond astonishing. And I'm not against urbanization. In fact, I talk about density when I teach. It's important for climate. It's important for saving energy. Not a problem. But it's not an either or. And density still needs to make sure that there are not these tiny little parks that can be used, or they have a couple of tennis courts like the Arts Center they're talking about. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about that when you have this amount, this is a huge amount of development, a huge amount of cement, a huge amount of loss of trees, that we need to look at this in the longer term. So the other issue is the Clarendon businesses have approached me several times that there's not enough parking. The millennials particularly come by bus and metro and Uber and scooters. They have not problems, and they have a great turnout of millennials on the weekends. But during the week, the business really is not that. It is really people commuting back from Washington into the suburbs and from other places in Arlington coming in, and the metro is not around where they are. And so the issue is make sure that as we plan all these mega buildings, that there are places that people can park for 2 hours and use the restaurants and the shops in the area. The good news is the red top construction has a large parking space for that will the public will be involved in. So
I'm
there
going to
is
go ahead
some
and give
thought.
you a time check.
And then the rooftop restaurant, I'm getting from 3 calls per month to 15 calls per month. We are asking it's taking up police time. It's not fair. And we need to get the county to agree to overtime pay to issue fines to stop the noise so people can sleep up at night. So the bottom line is interlacing within the bullseye density of Clarendon, we need some space. The parks that are 15 minutes away don't count, or the tiny parks don't count. And so it would be inexcusable to endorse more tons of cement within the Clarendon vortex, 9 large buildings, and actually believe that this is advanced development. It is not. So all 5 civic associations, for the first time ever, have united to keep the fire station, get the park, use the top of the fire station, and create a real social center for Clarendon beyond the cement and the buildings. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Scott. All right, I am going to go ahead and kick it off to David Orr and Ryan Orr. David and Ryan, if you want to turn on your cameras, we are glad to have them here with us today. David is the chairman of Orr Properties. He has extensive experience in development. I thought this was cool, David, that you were part of the Park Lane Hotel in Central Park.
Yeah.
But now he's here. We've got him here in this region. He started David Orr Associates in 1988 and now focuses on the DC metro area. And Orr Partners has grown into a well-regarded developer in the area with a broad portfolio, including some properties in Clarendon. Ryan who's co-presenting with him, is the vice president of development for Orr Properties and manages the financial aspects of the development process. He's integrally involved in the business, and he's going to help in sharing the details around the Orr Partners perspectives on Clarendon. And I will let them go ahead and expand on that. David, Ryan, take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. So I'm going to share my screen as well, if I may. See if I can find my presentation here. Go.
Great.
See if I can get this right. Trying to get it into slideshow. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Just trying to get it into slide format, and the control bar is covering it. I'm sorry.
Maybe do it as go to slideshow.
There's also a button in the bottom right corner over by where there's that slider there. If you look a little farther, a little to the left of where your arrow is, button in right there. If you click that, that should present.
There we go. I think it's doing it.
Great. Oh, now it's actually showing your behind the scenes of the screen presenter. So maybe if you go, I think if you go back to where it was before, we see a little bit of behind the scenes, but a little bit less.
Let me stop sharing. Ryan, you want to do it?
No, I don't have the file open.
Okay. Okay.
Well, we can see like this. So if you want to, you can go ahead like this, and we can see your
I'm
next
sorry.
slide too. But as long as you're fine with that, then we can go ahead
Sure.
like this.
Yeah, if you can see it, that's fine. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm sorry for the technical difficulty. I'm David Orr with Orr Partners, and we're pleased to discuss with you this evening our development at the Joyce Motors property. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of recent projects that we've done. We're a 35-year-old family business. The most recent delivery we had in Arlington was the Centro project in South Arlington, which is on the screen now. This project was done using the form-based code under Jen's leadership. And by every measure, it's been a big success. As you can see, there's a beautiful plaza. A lot of sustainability initiatives were incorporated into this building. There's retail and a grocery store at the bottom floor, and has proven to be really a great exoneration of the form-based code in its utilization in South Arlington. The next project is just that we've done is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation's headquarters. I'm sure you're all familiar with, as well as George Mason University's law school on Fairfax Drive. And we recently renovated the Washington Golf and Country Club and the YMCA at Arlington. And then these are just a couple of other of our residential developments, just to give you a sense of the scale and magnitude of what we do. I'll leaf through these fairly quickly. They're large mixed-use projects. And this last one, most notably, is the former United States Coast Guard headquarters at Buzzards Point, next to Audi Field in Washington, D.C. And this was a conversion to an adaptive reuse to 480 residential units. And Scott, I think you'd be pleased to know that this, on top of the roof of this building, is one of the largest apartment-based solar farms in the United States, and produces 3% of the power for the building. And so I'm going to turn it over to my son, Ryan, now, who's going to walk you through our proposed development plan for the Joyce Motors building. Ryan?
Thanks. You're gonna have to click to the next slides for me when I ask, but so here's an image of the site that we control now, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. If you just go to the next slide. And this is what's envisioned for the project. So we're thinking about calling it the Joyce, and we're going to be taking that facade off the existing building and moving it, refurbishing it to the corner, and that gives us kind of the basis for the design here. This is about 240 apartments, give or take, with below grade parking and about 3,000 square feet of retail in the corner here. So, you know, that Joyce Motors facade will act, there'll be garage doors that go up and down. We think that, and with some outdoor seating, we think restaurants and most likely use restaurant or cafe. The market will dictate to us, but we think that'll be some really cool retail space. 240 apartment units, like I said, it will be LEED Gold. We will have affordable housing in here. So Scott, you should be happy with that. We are using Antunovich as our architect, and DXA Studio out of New York for our interiors, and they're helping sort of craft the facade of it too. They're an amazing architecture firm. And so you can see here some of the interiors that they brought into the building. And so this is a bit of an homage to the existing building that's already there. You can see these 3 racing stripes that relate not exactly directly to those 3 racing stripes that are on the building now, but you know, it's relational. It's not exactly copied, but it's bringing that theme into the building, shall I say. The same with the green there. Go back for a second. As well as some of the artwork. Those are actually images of old gas stations across the country. So we're bringing this, that building was designed as streamlined, modern back in the 50s. And we're bringing that, some of those elements into the building here, which we think is a really cool design initiative. So we keep going, yeah, here. So there's a curved corner that you can see on the right. And that was part of the aesthetic of streamlined, modern. And then in the elevators, you know, like an old Texaco logo, as well as, you know, sort of old parts and motorcycles. So it's kind of bringing that theme in. We're very excited for the design, but doing it in a very elegant way as well, and refined. So it's not too cheesy and doesn't come out like Disneyland. Do you want to go back to that slide, Dave? Just, I think anything else I can touch on there. 240 units, like I said, some affordable housing. We'll have a roof deck up top with a pool and some amenities. But it should be, we're really excited for it. It's going to be part of, you know, what's envisioned for Clarendon, sort of a walkable village with tearing down the density from the metro stop to the neighborhoods behind. So you can see the steps that we've put into the building there. It's going to be like a white cream, almost off-white colored brick that we're really excited about. Large windows. It should be a really beautiful building. So, and then kind of the common streetscape landscaping that we see around Arlington that's dictated kind of by the county. So very excited, as we said, to be a part of this development and to help kind of really change what's there now on, you know, what's probably a pretty underutilized corner of Arlington. You know, we think that having that housing near the metro is super important for the area, especially as the Amazon fills in. Do you want to go to the next slide? I think, were we touching on?
That's really it. Yeah.
Our other project?
I mean, just that this is a slide of the red line, which is really not appropriate for tonight. So I think that really concludes our discussion about the Joyce Motors project.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, David and Ryan. Appreciate that. You know, it was part of my prep for tonight. I went on a walk through the neighborhood. So it really helped me in picturing what all of y'all are talking about. So this is really great. Thank you. Jennifer, Brett, if y'all could go ahead and turn your cameras back on. We are going to kick off into the Q&A. To our audience, a reminder about that Q&A box in the Zoom down at the bottom. If you have questions, please go ahead and submit those in there. We do have some already, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off with those. I'm going to start with Elizabeth, who she asked, could your speakers address building height for the proposed development along 10th Street? 10th Street is, I just want to double check, I understand this question. 10th Street is the one behind the Joyce, right? That's what we're talking. That's what that street is?
In front of the Joyce, yeah.
In front of the Joyce, great, thank you. So could y'all, and what I'm going to do with this Q&A, I generally will not direct to you as individuals. I'll let you kind of self-select which questions you do and don't want to answer. So I'll let you, I'll pardon any awkward pauses, but I'll let you step in as you would like to speak. So can you address the building height for the proposed development along 10th Street?
I can start. As I mentioned in my presentation, on the county site on 10th Street between Hudson and Irving Street, the 2006 plan permitted heights up to 75 feet, tapering up to 110 feet. So our staff recommendation is simply extending that height regulation just one block to the west between North Irving and Wilson Boulevard to provide some consistency along that northern edge of 10th Street. I think, as I also mentioned in my presentation, that we considered the transition in height and the dimension of the right-of-way of 10th Street, which is considerably wide at just a little bit over 100 feet. So I think our recommendations really of increasing heights from 55 feet to 75 feet are modest increases in heights and still achieve a transition in height down from the northern core of Clarendon, where the metro is, to the southern portion where the lower density residential is. So I hope that answers the question.
The only thing I'd like to add, and Brett's 100% correct, but we as a community, when you deviate from the plan, it's also supposed to result in community benefits. So we're always questioning as a civic association what these community benefits are. And, you know, the builders say, well, we'll put a porch or something on there or a rooftop, you know, bar. And we don't see that as a community benefit. So we're constantly coming in saying, validate these community benefits if you're going to go and allow them to get higher. And of course, make sure that, and the staff's done a great job to make sure there won't be shading on Ashton Heights, which I thank you for.
Sure, and I think as noted previously in LRPC, the specifics of community benefits are typically discussed during the site plan review committee process and not during the long range planning process.
That's correct.
However, you know, we will be considering contributions to open space, affordable housing, energy efficient design, infrastructure improvements following the zoning ordinance. So that'll be, again, something that's discussed in the SPRC, and there will be members from the community involved in that process.
just want to jump in there and really echo what Brett said. Those were some fundamental elements of the 2006 plan, and that continues today with the sector plan update. That in terms of earning any density above a 3.0 FAR, which I know we didn't really emphasize too much here tonight, but whatever density a developer can achieve up to their maximum density within the building envelope that we prescribe, that would be earned density for the benefit, towards those community benefits, affordable housing, public space, public facilities. There was opportunities for transfer of density, which was used for a number of projects. So those continue to stand, and those would be evaluated with each application coming forward through the site plan review process.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and go to Janine. Janine asks, what is happening with St. Charles Church?
Well, I think I can address that. So early on in the process, they approached us and asked us to be part of the process, to be included as part of the study area that they may potentially be looking at redeveloping the Catholic Church, along with a multifamily residential project. Throughout the process, they had a representative on the LRPC. They hired a consultant and shared some conceptual designs for a replacement Catholic church closer to the Clarendon Circle intersection with a multifamily residential further west towards Kirkwood Road, which are in several materials that are shared online. But they do not have a site plan application that's been filed with the county. And we're anticipating maybe one soon, but we don't know. But from what we've heard to date, their current concept included a replacement church with a parish center and a multifamily residential project.
Thank you. John is asking, in plans for the low and middle income housing, what are the income ranges for owners and for renters? I think that the question is actually renters. I don't think there's an income range for owners. I just want to clarify that with John. So I think renters is really what we're asking.
I'll take that, and maybe the question is really with regards to what does affordable housing mean? So
Yeah.
Within that context, I will answer it that way. That the county has policies in terms of that are set out in the Affordable Housing Master Plan, which is one of the 11 elements of the county's comprehensive plan. And when we think about creating committed affordable housing units, those mean that they have been established, with a term length to, remain affordable. And usually those are for households that have incomes of 60% or less of the area median incomes. There are certain times where that, may increase up to 80% of the area median income, but it's typically for households at 60% and below for rental apartments. If you ask me what the area median income off the top of my head at the moment, I failing to deliver on that response at the moment. And obviously it depends on how big your household size is. A few years ago, I think for a family of 4, I think it was around 104,000. And that probably has changed since the last time I looked.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was really helpful context in the conversation. Marjorie asks, where will the mental health services that were once located next to the fire station be provided?
I'll just jump in there. Those facilities and programs were relocated several years ago, and those are down in the Sequoia complex where our Department of Human Services is located. Some of those facilities and programs were relocated a few years ago. So part of this study is really to think about, again, the future and what uses can be brought forward for this site, whether it's open space as originally planned in the 2006 plan, along with fire station or some of the other scenarios that Brett talked about.
Great, thank you. Ginger asks, what neighborhood enhancements will be required from developers when deviations from existing restrictions are approved?
I'll take a shot at that as a developer.
Thanks, David.
I can tell you that what we end up doing is we have a series of negotiations with the county, and we establish a community benefits plan. And it's a wide range of things. Jen touched on a few of those previously, but we end up developing a list of what we call development conditions, which become part of our approval and become mandatory things that we have to do associated with the project. It's a good faith negotiation to reach out to the various constituents in the community and understand what the needs are and try to address those needs. So like by way of example, when we did the Centro project in South Arlington, the consensus in the community is that they wanted to have, there's plenty of places to, really there are plenty of parks, but they really wanted to have one that had a lot of greenery and the ability to sit down and have a cup of coffee and really have a more relaxed presence. And so that became the theme for the park that we did, the public plaza that we did in front of that particular project. So it's taking community input and digesting that and developing it into a series of development conditions associated with the project. Jen and Brett, if you want to augment that, feel free to.
Covered. Great. So I'm going to go to the next one. David asks, do the plans, I think referring to Clarendon sector plans, assume street parking by new residents? And if so, why?
I'll take this one. All of the parking in the Clarendon area and pretty much throughout the corridor is really public parking. Many of it is paid or metered or zoned parking with certain parking restrictions. So we would expect each of the developments to provide the parking for the building program on site. And typically that's going to be completely below grade. There could be times where some of that may be at grade for some convenient retail space, but certainly in a place that's not right in public view, because we really are trying to get higher and better uses really at the back of the sidewalk to really maintain that placemaking, great opportunities for people to pass by and see shops or other uses at the ground floor space. So any parking along the curbside, the public street, would be public parking, not dedicated for a specific tenant.
Great, thank you. And a reminder to our audience, I know that a lot of you who join us every month, you're used to us going ahead and wrapping up at 8. We did extend this program to 8:15 because we wanted to give a little extra time to the presenters and a little extra time for Q&A. So we've got a little bit longer. We're going to keep going with questions. You're welcome to keep submitting them. We do have a lot of questions that have been coming in. The next one, Mary's referencing the county slides that noted outreach to the certain commissions. And she asks, why weren't Historic Affairs and the Landmark Review Board, the Urban Forestry and Natural, excuse me, my pronunciation, and the Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission included in those processes?
I can take that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't touch on that earlier. But yeah, this was part of an expanded LRPC group. So we had representatives from each of the development teams. We had several representatives from other commissions that were just mentioned, including urban forestry and the others there. So we've had representatives throughout the process attend, and we're trying to get to as many commissions as possible for the county board. Hopefully that answers your question. we did have representatives from some of those commissions on the LRPC.
Great, thank you. Adam is referencing what Scott was talking about with easier parking, and he has a question for the ORs specifically. He said, what can be done for future developments for super easy garage parking? Is there a way to design parking garages to make parking almost as frictionless as street parking?
Ryan, you want to take that?
Yeah, as frictionless as street parking. I'm assuming you're meaning for a retail use there. I mean, it is tricky from a retail perspective if you're going to come into a garage to make it as easy as street parking. You're generally, as Jen said, going to be parking below grade, maybe at grade. There are jurisdictions that allow you to park above grade, but you're generally pulling into a parking garage, and especially if you're below grade, then you have vertical circulation that you have to deal with going up. So I don't know if there's any way to make that as easy as street parking. I wish there was.
Well, if I may add in as sort of a co-panelist here, I've seen in some other urban areas where the developers divide their garages and have, you know, a half hour, 1 hour, and 2 hour spots. And it's sort of a little streamlined so you could get the flow. You know, the people live in the building, of course, or work in the building, or on one side of a garage, a separate entrance for the public. And it does create a more, I guess, flow for folks coming to visit in from outside. I guess that's what
fair.
I was thinking. So I was
Yeah.
wondering if you had any great ideas. And
Well,
since you had great beard, I'm sure you do.
Yeah. I'm gonna grow it as long as you one day, Scott.
No, you don't want to sink that low, I promise you. So, but anyway,
Well, I mean, that's pretty site specific. If you visit our Centro project down in Columbia Pike, what we actually did there is it's a 3-acre site, and we have 2 levels of below grade parking. I believe it's 600 parking spaces, and so we have the retail level is the first level, and so that's all of the future resident parking. If you're coming to visit to lease a unit, you can park there. If you're coming to the grocery store, you park there, and then if you're a resident, you keep going down, and you have a key fob to access only a restricted access area for the residents.
Right.
So that's typically what we try to do, and we spend a lot of time doing garage signage and painting and striping, so it's very clear as to where to go. You know, we do the best we can to make that delineated.
well, that's good. I think that's what we're saying we need. So,
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I have a question from Jerry here, and I'm going to acknowledge myself as very directionally challenged. Anybody who spends time walking around the community with me will know that I've lived here my whole life and still struggle. And so I'm going to ask for a little bit of help from the panelists in describing what Jerry is referencing to make sure that we can kind of, those of us who've spent time in Clarendon can picture exactly what he's talking about. But I'm going to go ahead and read the question. Will the revised sector plan discuss adding parking and sidewalk space on the north side of Wilson Boulevard to enhance the pedestrian and community space aside and in front of the historic landmark North Side Social Building? Could someone just help color in a little bit exactly, very in detail, where he's describing?
It's talking about from North Side Social down past the Dominion substation to the corner where Fairfax and 10th, converge.
Is that parking lot area? Am I
Yes,
understanding that correctly?
which is across from the lot. So it's on the North Side Social side of Wilson.
Okay, perfect.
And
So
Brett,
thank you for
might
that.
be able to, Brett, you might be able to answer that question in terms of basically the cross section that we're looking at for Wilson Boulevard in that stretch.
Yeah, I was just trying to pull it up. So that is one change of the cross section of Wilson Boulevard. As you know, the sidewalk on the north side social side is very not pedestrian friendly, if I could say that.
yeah.
As narrow as 4 to 5 feet, and with existing utilities, So staff is recommending extending that streetscape on the north side, on the where the north side social is, to be 12 feet wide with a clear sidewalk, I believe, of 8 feet, with street trees. And then what that's doing to the other side is it's shifting the center line of Wilson Boulevard to accommodate the two travel lanes and also parking on the Silver Diner side of Wilson Boulevard. And that parking will be interdispersed with street tree plantings. So if you've been up to the phase 2 redevelopment of Market Common further up Wilson Boulevard near Whole Foods, there where the former Iota Cafe and Engravers building is, you can see there's parking, and then there's a street tree, there's a couple parking spots, and then another street tree. So this allows to maintain the right-of-way width, but also achieve a good, walkable streetscape on the north side social side of the street without further impacting, encroachment and development further east on the Silver Diner property. So we are recommending an improved streetscape on that side of the street, which I think we've heard loud and clear throughout the process, and it's pretty obvious that it's a pretty horrible pedestrian experience.
And that sounds great, by the way. Thank you.
Great, thank you. John has a question here that I think I understand to be referring to the Joyce project. And you panelists, if you disagree with me, feel free to correct me, but I think that's what he's asking here. He says, how does your proposal mitigate the canyon impact, which Scott had referenced previously, and adjoining properties within one block losing sunlight for many hours of the day?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think that question really applies to the entire sector plan, because I know that the staff has heard that comment frequently from the various communities and has worked very hard at integrating step backs and setbacks at the streetscapes to address that and provide a more walkable urban village environment. And I know that that's been the very big part of our discussions on our particular project. But generally, in the sector plan overall, I think the staff has made it a very important point.
Thanks, David. Anyone else want to add there?
Brett, anything else that you want to add in terms of solar, or anything else in terms of the step back design that we still considered looking at how we could create that sort of base level in certain places, like along Irving and certain sections of Wilson?
Yeah, and we did a lot of analysis through LRPC looking at, again, trying to maintain and create that pedestrian scale with the streetscape, the street trees, and really focusing on that kind of 20/20, like horizontal, vertical, like proportion, where you're really mostly focused as a pedestrian, and looking at the proportion of the right-of-way in the street. As we noted in some of our presentations earlier, the Verizon building is set back, I think, I can't remember, but about 20 feet, 25 feet from the back of sidewalk with some landscaping. So therefore, we're not trying to create an urban canyon-like a feel with, tall buildings on both sides, but trying to think about the proportions, the streetscape, but also some of the step backs that are recommended currently for the Joyce Motor site on the corner of North Irving Street, which is consistent with the step back policies of the zoning ordinance for historic preservation of facades, which is 10 feet. But again, throughout the process, we look at numerous examples of creative ways that to provide articulation in the architecture and the facade, to provide some relief and more light and air to the streetscape. So I think those are all considerations. I would also note that in the sector plan draft text that's posted online, there are design guidelines that we've drafted up as well for step backs, and again, to create variation at the streetscape level, to create variety and interest, as I mentioned, at that pedestrian scale. So those are guidelines that will be reviewed by planning commissioners and SPRC members going forward as part of a more detailed site plan review process. So we're hoping that those are sufficient enough to guide that discussion.
Thank you. I think we have time for probably one more question. We're at 8:10 here. So Julie has one that I think is probably a good wrap up. Brett mentioned that a plan for St. Charles Church has not yet been submitted. Have plans been submitted for other sites, and to what extent do the recommended height adjustments conform to the submitted plans?
Yes, I can speak to that. So we have on file applications for the Joyce Motors project and the Bingham Center project, or the Silver Diner project. And both would be seeking relief from the sector plan and the current zoning ordinance regulations that have been presented earlier this evening. We are anticipating an application soon for the Wells Fargo and Verizon property. They had submitted a conceptual site plan well over a year ago, but we have not formally accepted anything for the Wells Fargo Verizon site. And as I mentioned earlier, we're anticipating an application from the St. Charles Church site, but we're unaware of what their timeline is at the moment. So of the 4 private sites, we have 2 applications that have been formally accepted.
Just to add some additional context to there, the Joyce Motors application, and Mr. Orr, may want to respond, but that was submitted before we started this process. So they were proposing heights that were, in keeping for the most part with the 2006 plan, although they had proposed some changes, which was one of the things that we reviewed and have come to some proposed changes to the sector plan. But I would say that we have not initiated any SPRC, the Site Plan Review Committee, for any of those applications. And really the first step is getting this plan and any recommendations adopted, which would inform the review of any applications, including the Joyce application.
Thank you. Anything else to add on that final question from anyone else? Great. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. But what I want to say to our audience, I know, and I see here in the Q&A box, we have a lot of feedback for our panelists, and we have that every month, especially when we get into development processes. So I want to ask if this is really the forum where we provide the information and the background, but I want to ask our panelists if you can share, if people have feedback on these processes. You referenced it at the beginning. Can you share again where they can provide their feedback? I think we have April 23rd. Is that the right? Do I have that right? That date correct? If you would mind sharing.
Sure.
Yeah, that's correct.
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah. The county board will hear this item on April 23rd. And certainly everybody's welcome to join and provide public comment, and or in leading up to that meeting, submit comments to myself. I think I provided my email address is also on the website. I think there's also an open comment form that's still live. So we're collecting all comments and feedback, and those will be considered and responded to as part of that presentation and the report.
Great. Thank you, Brett. Brett, would you be open to, you encourage people to potentially email you. Would you be open to putting your email address in that chat box there that goes out to the audience, so that if they want to connect, that they can? Would that be all right?
Yes, I don't mind
Wonderful.
doing that.
Thank you. And one note, a little technical note, when you go to the chat box, you'll want to adjust it to make sure it says to everyone and not just to host and panelists. So thank you very much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. So that will be a great resource for our audience. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone who joined us. I really want to thank our panelists. You know, every month we get some really, really strong panelists. Our program committee comes up with these great topics, and we manage to get some of the best of the best voices in Arlington who are close to the issue. So thank you to David, to Scott, to Brett, to Jennifer, and Ryan for all being here with us tonight. We really appreciate your time. I want to encourage everyone who's with us to save the date for our May program on Wednesday, May 11th at 7 p.m. We'll hope you'll join us for a discussion about what's being done to address the severe shortage of adequate mental health services, care professionals, and hospital beds in our community and in Virginia as a whole now and in the future. The link to register for that program is in the chat. If you enjoyed this program tonight and maybe you want to rewatch, I know we have lots of details, so rewatching is always encouraged. The recording is for one on our Facebook page. We've been streaming this live throughout the course of the program. It will also be posted to our website. We are an all volunteer organization, so I do not make guarantees on how quickly that video goes up on our website, but it will be up soon and you can go back and rewatch this. Scott's laughing as a community volunteer. He knows exactly how that works.
100%.
Our website is www.arlingtoncommittee100.org, and that's where you'll be able to see the video. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're really glad to have you here on this April evening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the weather. Maybe go patronize a Clarendon restaurant this weekend. Go shopping at any of the retail places. Clarendon neighborhood could use your support. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.